I was about to say good evening, everyone, and I realized I must have said it before. So, this panel is basically, this session is to discuss what makes a media brand special. Okay, so it's about nurturing a media brand, keeping it relevant with the passage of time in the face of so much change. And yeah, I think at the heart of it, it will be about what makes a media brand from a marketing standpoint a different challenge. I'm not saying necessarily a greater or lesser challenge, but a different challenge. And here we are, let's get started. So my first question to all of you would be, each of you could take it by turn, that what is the challenge in terms of nurturing a media brand different from nurturing any other brand? What makes a media brand special?
Hi everyone, hello to all the panelists, great to be here. Well, I don't know special, but what I can definitely say is that one of the joys as a content marketer is to work with something which at a product level is already a living, breathing thing. And so what then your challenge is to attempt a point of view on that content. And it's even more exciting when there's already, say, a popular title or say an iconic personality who's behind it, then you know the buzz is already there. And then what is the unique point of view that you bring to it which makes it even more exciting for audiences? And that to me is exciting about content marketing as opposed to say a physical product marketing.
Okay.
Right. I think I should pass the mic
Yeah.
around. Hi. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Because most places I'm not audible. My voice is always very low. Okay.
No,
Okay. So I think it's pretty. See, unlike most people in this room, I am actually not from the world of media. In that sense, I'm from advertising. So close enough, but still not quite there. Right. So my view of, when you ask the question, what does it take to nurture a media brand or a new media brand for that matter? Okay, in this whole changing world, etc. See, I think the fundamental principles of a brand don't really change, right? So whether you're an emerging media brand or an established media brand, I think the fundamental that you follow your consumer. You need to have a laser sharp focus on your consumer, where your consumer is going, what your consumer is doing, what interests her, and how she is changing, right? I think that's something that any brand marketer would, in a sense, want to be on top of. And to that extent, I think even media brands, I think that's exactly what you want to be on top of, where your consumer is going and what's going on in her life, right? The interesting thing, of course, unlike a lot of other brands that we handle across different categories, nowadays it's very fashionable to talk of D2C brands, right? I think media was really the original D2C player. If you really think about it, and when you really think of the emerging media platforms and emerging media brands, they're really D2C, right? So in that sense, the principles of what I would typically call D2C brands apply. But broadly speaking, I think it really comes down to your consumer. Okay, so whether you're emerging, established, the fact is you got to be on top of what your consumer is up to, where she is moving, what interests her, or where she is moving in her life. I think that's really the fundamental, like any other brand would do.
Niti?
Yeah, so hi everyone. So just to add, I think very interesting points by both Pinaki and Kartik, but I was lucky enough or unlucky enough to work, the first brand I worked on when I started media planning were media brands. It was, I think, Z News and HBO, right?
Okay.
So I kind of got it, on ground learnings. So I think one of the things that stayed with me was with media brands, it's a fine balance between the brand itself and the content on it, right? So for instance, when we were doing HBO, what should be the hero? Should it be the Spider-Man movie or should it be HBO, the brand? So how do you kind of balance it when you are actually communicating? So I think that was a big difference vis-a-vis, let's say marketing a car or a soap or a shampoo, right? Which stays pretty much what it is, nothing changes. The other one was, again, repeatedly keeping the brand relevant, because it's all about, at the end of the day, media brands are about content. So how are you taking out, and I think Kartik touched upon that, right? How are you building out content that's relevant to consumers, their evolving tastes, all of the technology changes that are happening, right? So the whole relevance piece, I think your product formulation changes every hour, every day with every FPC, right? So how are you keeping that alive with consumers? So I think these are the two that stood out for me.
Actually, you know, you brought up something. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, it's that. Yeah, you brought up something that was actually my next question, which is that you said it exactly, which is that people love the story, they love the plot, they love the character, they look forward to that series, but you know, actually, finally, most media companies are aggregators, right? Even a newspaper, I mean, which is about really an old medium, and it's you know, it's more static than other media. It's a collection of stories all there in one day's edition, right? So whether it's radio, TV, OTT, everybody is basically, we are aggregators, right? Media brands, we put it all together in one place, and people love the things that make us whole. But does that mean they love the whole? I mean, I look forward to a program. I'm very loyal to it, but tomorrow I get something else, I go there. So how do you, Kartik, you face that, right? So do you play up, as she said, Spider-Man or the...
So yeah, I mean, that's a good reference that she gave, and just to build on that, I think one way to look at it is that if the content is, say, the picture, and the brand in that sense is the frame that's around the picture, the framing of that picture, in a sense, creates the holistic perspective of what you're showcasing to your audience. I do not agree that we are aggregators, we are storytellers. And the kind of stories that you choose to tell is then really what stands out, could become your differentiation. And what goes into that storytelling is really going deep into culture, being native to culture. And when you're speaking to your audience, even though you're a mass medium, which television is, but if you're speaking, and Nisha spoke about it earlier, that if you're native to that city, and if you're going deep into that culture of that city or that region, you don't cut India geographically, but you sort of look at the various socio-cultural regions that exist, and you understand what is that bhasha, and what is their boli, and what is their lexicon, and you pick on that, and you find characters that are aspirational and inspirational from that region, then it becomes a lot more local, and it feels like it's meant for me. And then the brand which is able to do that consistently over a period of time is then building that, that equity with the consumer.
I like you know what you said about the frame that frames the content. It's a very interesting way of looking at it. But why do you say media companies are not aggregators? I mean, we are storytellers, of course. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. But we do, even any entertainment channel, it has films from different producers, it has series made by different people, and it's all in one place. I mean, I don't mean aggregator in a...
Yeah, I mean, in that manner of speaking, yes. But I think because... so we are reaching out to 880 million viewers, and it's not necessary that, you know, all the content that is on a particular content brand or a channel is resonating with each one of them. So in that sense, you are building a very one-on-one connection, even though you're mainstream and mass, because you're telling a story that resonates with one particular person. And there are many who are like that. So you're telling a story to a segment of one, and then you're kind of finding the homogeneity.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Okay, Pinaki?
Yeah, but actually, it's interesting. I mean, in that sense, media is so different from... I don't have to say it, but we know it, right? The dynamics in media and media companies is so different. And I'm again looking at it from a consumer's lens, right?
Correct.
That's how I understand things better.
No, but that's why your presence is interesting.
So again, I mean, it's interesting when I see young people around me and I talk to them, and So it's the dynamic that I find very interesting is, yes, there is a brand. There are radio.
Could you hold it a little closer?
Sorry? Yeah.
Could you hold
Yeah.
the
So
mic?
there are radio brands and there are television brands, there are OTT platforms, OTT music, OTT other kinds of content, etc. What is interesting is, when I speak to people, and I'm sure you all will have much more large-scale sort of research that will bear that out, there are all kinds of things that are at play, and depends on, as a brand, what you want to focus on. So there are people who follow, say, if you take the case of radio, I know a lot of people who follow certain RJs, right? If that RJ tomorrow jumps ship and goes to another channel, possibly that audience is still going to follow that RJ. Same with platforms, right? There are lots of OTT platforms out there today, right? Which people follow. But more than the platform, I think it's the content on the platform. So you are in love with a particular series and you're waiting for the next season to come, and you're waiting for the third and the fourth and the fifth season to come, right? So you're following that. So recently, I was just talking, is one allowed to take names of brands in this session? You are? Okay. So
It's on you.
So just for example, I've been following Succession, right? And when I heard that HBO is pulled out of Hotstar, I was like, where the hell am I going to watch Succession now?
Sure.
Now I'm hearing it's going to come back with Geo, etc. I don't know if it's going to happen, but that's the thing that I've read. So that's what I'm saying. So people follow.
Sure.
Okay, they're passionate about certain kind of programs, certain kind of characters, RJs.
Sure.
Okay. And they will follow that regardless of which platforms those people are moving to, or those shows are moving to, or those personalities are moving to. So that's one interesting dynamic within this overall schema of brands. So yes, brands count, brands matter. See, if you look at, again, music OTT, right? Arguably, you will find 2 or 3 different music OTT platforms which have, they'll never have the same library, but you could argue 60, 70, 80% of the library content is going to be same, right? But still someone prefers one brand over another, right?
Sure.
That's when you'll talk of the user interface, the intuitiveness of how AI is helping them understand their choices better, personalization, etc. Right? So somebody enjoys spending time on one kind of platform versus the other. Content being almost similar.
Sure.
So there are lots of things at play. Depends on what you as a marketer really want to chase and what do you want to hold on to.
If you, sorry, please go ahead. So I wanted to ask you this, that if, media planners are so cold-blooded and driven by logic, right? Should I withdraw that?
I know. We like to position ourselves that way.
Okay, good. So it was a compliment then. Okay. So the thing is that then, from your point of view, does the media brand per se matter, or is it the program? I mean, I was actually coming to that when we talk about, say, a larger brand, is it more for the consumer, what, say, Z stands for, as opposed to the buyer who is more driven by programming? That's what I want to ask.
Actually, I think the buyer is driven by both.
Okay.
And it depends on what you are buying for.
Okay.
There are certain genres, for instance, where purely looking at numbers doesn't make sense. And we all know that.
Correct.
For whatever reason, right? So it could be news, it could be, when English entertainment was there, the numbers never showed up.
Correct.
But you would pick it up because you knew that there were certain affinities, you knew there were certain audiences who were definitely on the genre,
Correct.
right? And the brand drove a lot of that, right? I think, again, what the brand brings to it, I think one of the biggest logical advantages, is distribution. When it comes to media brands, the outreach that you have, much like, for a levers, the shampoo distribution is important, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, what the brand brings, and it's usually through a network or, even the digital brands, right? The outreach of a Google is much more than a smaller platform, right? And I think the second thing is, I think if media marketers look at the brand as a platform and not as a channel or not as a, so when Nisha was talking earlier about how Red FM is actually becoming so much more than just a radio channel, right? So I think that's another huge advantage. And again, both from a consumer perspective, because a consumer finds different ways to engage, and from a buyer's or advertiser's perspective, because if I can get multiple touch points of one channel, then it's always helpful, right? So I think that's the way I'd look at it, a little more holistic.
Okay, actually, we were looking at how media brands are different, and I think I missed the obvious one, I think, which is staring us in the face, which is that we spend more time with media as a category than certainly any other category. I mean, now it must be, I don't know the numbers, maybe it's 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours a day. Whether you're watching something on the screen, it's audio, you're reading something, it's really an enormous amount of time, and I don't think we spend that kind of time really on anything, not even driving, which must you, huh? Why not? So that's one thing that makes it different. So now to come to the original question, which is the thing, that from a keeping relevant point of view, there's one is, of course, programming, right? But like older brands have this issue of staying relevant, because the category has changed, etc., right? How does it work for a media brand? What do you worry about, in terms of being relevant? Because newer cohorts are still coming on and consuming, programming on the screen, and they're a new bunch, and in India it will keep on happening for a long time. So what do you worry about in terms of being relevant to them, as opposed to people like in TV who may be older, who know what the medium is about? They know what Z stands for, right? How do you deal with that then?
So I think change is exciting, and change has always been there. So, and as content creators or marketers, you're always finding what's the coming context, whether it's consumption behavior or changes in technology, right? And you want to adopt that so that you're finding a more efficient way and a more engaging way to get to your consumer, and you're constantly changing your route to market and things like that. I think in the content ecosystem, post the post-pandemic era, obviously consumption behaviors have changed in dramatic ways. It's been a catalyst for language agnostic content consumption. The complexity of devices with the genres of content and the experimentation with newer genres of content that whole thing has, it's been a catalyst to that as well. So there are multiple factors at play. But at Z, at least the way we look at it is, if we are a storyteller and we are a content creator, then how do we look at the videoverse as opposed to a particular medium?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't get that.
So how do you look at it as a videoverse, right? A universe of different devices, different occasions of consumption,
correct.
Different needs for the format of story that you're consuming. And so then if you have a spectrum of devices and then you have a choice of saying that, okay, I'd be willing to pay for this, but I'd like to watch this for free, then are you serving those segments as well, and you're creating efficient content design to serve those multiple need states? And that's exciting, because then you're broadening your mediums and you're broadening your the kind of storytelling that you could do as well.
Okay. Pinaki, to come to you, if you were just for a minute dip into the history of brands, and you look at brands as they get older, and how they stay relevant, right? Can you give some quick tips so that these are the kind of issues that come up? You must have in your career come across brands which have kind of lost touch with consumers, right? What are the typical things, check boxes that you say, listen,
I think, if you ask me that question, I think if you look at the history of brands that were very, very popular and matured and then sort of fizzled out at some point, it typically is a case of not being dynamic. Not being dynamic. You have to be dynamic. You cannot. And I think media brands tend to be more dynamic than a lot of other brands in other categories, right? Because you're constantly trying to sort of churn out content that's relevant and that sort of talks to the people of today, right? So in that sense, it is. But
and it's measurable now. Everything is measurable.
Of course, increasingly more measurable. Increasingly more measurable, unlike a lot of other categories.
Right.
Well, actually, most categories today are measurable. But yeah, this is instantly measurable, right? For others, you have to wait a month or weeks or a quarter to get a sense of where things are moving. No, having said that, see, it comes on. I really do feel for media brand marketeers, right? I mean, it's tough because consumers are brutal. Okay, consumers are brutal. They will switch. Okay, at the drop of a hat. In sense of, I love something today. I don't love this anymore tomorrow, and I want to move on to something that's more exciting, something that's new and buzzy. So I think the biggest challenge for marketers and media is to stay on top of how consumer tastes are changing, evolving. Having said that, I also do know that in the world of media, I think media actually shapes a lot of what consumers how their tastes evolve, right? A lot of the stimulus comes from media. It's not that the consumer knows what I'm going to
Sorry, could
like.
I interrupt you for
Yeah,
a minute?
yeah.
We're a little short of time. One thing I wanted to ask you was that when you say, when you look at other categories,
Right.
so is it typically a lack of innovation because of which brands have kind of lost, it's a case of losing touch with consumers?
It's not necessarily always innovation, but it's about really what your proposition is. Okay? What is the meaningful difference you're making to a consumer's life? Okay. So just because you made meaningful difference to a consumer's life in 2021 doesn't mean that same proposition is going to make that same delta in a consumer's life in 2023.
Well said.
Right? If a soap promises me something today versus my changing standards, understanding of, let's say, beauty or skincare, right? And if the soap that was selling me a kind of skincare, a kind of standard of beauty or frame of beauty or reference of beauty 3 years back, and if that has changed and you're still offering me the same, it doesn't work for me anymore. Right? So that's how. But like I said, in the case of media consumption, I think that's even more faster, much more dynamic. Taste just keep changing. Okay. But like I said, a lot of the taste changes because of the stimulus that is put out to them, right? Which is why I think it's very interesting to be in this business, because at one level you're able to shape culture, you're able to shape the tastes of people, but somebody else is also trying to change their tastes, right? So you have to know what's going on in consumers' lives, and you have to keep chasing that consumer constantly, much closer than most other categories would need to do.
Niti?
You know, I sometimes wonder, has a lot actually changed when it comes to the way consumers consume media? I mean, look at the top-rated programs on TV. It's the same stuff, right? I mean, it's the same serials, where whatever, there's a sad woman protagonist and so on. So sometimes I wonder, and as a viewer, not as a media planner. As a media planner, I go by logic, like Sreekant said, right? But
this is becoming like an accusation.
No.
I accused you of logic.
No, we do actually. So the thing is, I wonder, is it because there isn't enough content innovation that's happening? Because again, if you look at OTTs, right, my personal view, how much will we do crime and UP, Bihar? It's, that's what seems to be popular. So I think somewhere is the innovativeness missing? So is it from the content creator's perspective, or is it that that's what the consumer wants? So are we at fault as viewers because that's what we are lapping up? So I don't know.
Now, Kartik.
I keep grappling.
I mean, I do agree in parts, but see, we look at innovation as always being big and disruptive innovation, but at least in the content world, it does not need to be like that, because like you mentioned, content is also culture shaping.
Correct.
And you don't take giant leaps in culture, right? I mean, it is everyday small innovation which kind of moves the narrative forward. I mean, we are in a world right now where there is infinite choice, there is the tyranny of convenience, and in that, how amazing it is that there are shows which are long running and successful. It's not as if it's been stuck in the same story, but there are elements that are being added to it. The character keeps building on a certain character trait that might be appealing to begin with that viewer. I mean, shows like my colleague from Ant TV is here, Bhabhi Ji Ghar Par Hai. It's into its 9th year. Wow. Over 2,000 episodes.
That's incredible.
There is incredible love for that character, but what happens is then you go back and look at newer insights and keep that story relevant to the times of today. In that sense, the innovation that we require is more at an insight level. We have a lot of data, but the more difficult part is to find insights that can lend to storytelling. And when you're able to do that consistently, then that becomes a long-running successful show on TV.
Actually, that's really, who's the gentleman is he there?
Pallavi.
Oh, hi Pallavi. Hi. Actually, it's very interesting. So 2000 episodes will be 9 years. Yeah. So actually, I mean, it's such a long time that the India of 2014 is, of 2023, so different from the India of 2014. So lot of, that's true. I think that's absolutely a point.
No, but what I actually do find fascinating, just building on the point that you were saying, there are some programs that just go on and on for years and years and people are still watching. But I think what's interesting is, I think we keep saying this is a cliche. I know there are many Indias, right? So if I take a sample size of one, my own household, right? The programs that I watch versus what my 21-year-old watches versus what my 16-year-old watches, all different.
All
right?
different. That's true.
All different. So my 21-year-old and her bunch of friends are watching certain kind of stuff. My 16-year-old is watching a lot of K-dramas and K-pop and K-whatever, right? I won't go anywhere near that. What I watch is something they will not. What my mother used to watch. A lot of the reality shows, dance and music and all of that, right?
That's right.
All different in one household, right? So I think in this country there is enough market in every niche and enough numbers in every small segment that you go after, right? And end of the day, brands which advertise on these platforms are interested in those. I mean, how sticky are.
But you know, somebody once put it very well, that there is a niche in the market, but is there a market in the niche?
In this country, there is. Every niche is huge.
Okay,
right?
I
Niche
think
is not
we've
really tidy.
kind of run out of time. Okay, thanks, Kartik, Pinaki, Niti. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your patience.
A big thank you to all the panelists for diving into their rich experience and sharing such insights with us. And thank you so much, Mr. Khandekar, for moderating this panel discussion.
High energy.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, the bar is open, but only for the next 10 minutes. Please be back with us for 10 minutes because we'll be kick-starting the Media Brand Awards in 10 minutes from now. Grab yourself a drink and be ready to cheer for the winners. We'll see you soon. Thank you.